Good morning, Nikunj, and thank you for being with us on the show and for talking to us. Nikunj, as you know, is the former president of FARA, that's the Federation of Automotive Dealers for India, and is currently the chairman for the Automotive Skills Development Council as well. So the responsibilities are large, and there's a lot of awareness about the dealer fraternity in this country, and of course, the kind of businesses that happen and take place over there in that space. So Nikunj, thank you for being with us on the show this morning.
Thank you, Bert, for having me there.
Nikunj, we've just seen yesterday the announcements from the finance minister on the stimulus package that they've offered to the country. What was your opinion of the whole thing?
So definitely a very big positive in terms of now also ensuring that it's not just about liquidity being available, but with the government coming in to offer guarantees for additional working capital limits to MSMEs. So I think dealerships should benefit not directly because most dealerships are not covered as MSMEs, but will get into the same category as far as the banks are concerned. Two, I think the widening of definition of MSME is also a very, very big positive because a lot of dealerships which were not getting registered as MSMEs might get registered in MSMEs because of services being included and the fact that the turnover limit has been increased, and it's either or. So capital investment or turnover, whichever, but you qualify. So the smaller dealerships will definitely qualify and take benefits, and we are in touch with the MSME ministry, and fortunately the Honorable Minister of MSME, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, has assured all help in case there is lack of clarity on whether dealerships can be covered under MSMEs or not. So definitely a way forward. And I guess some of the measures to make more cash available, like reducing the TDS by 25%, reducing TCS by 25%, the fact that 2% of the PF will also now be reduced. So all this will definitely result in some more money being available with the consumers and also with the businesses. So a positive, but no direct benefit for auto dealerships as of now. We are keeping our fingers crossed because there are 3 more tranches to come, and hopefully there will be some direct benefits to the automotive business because it continues to contribute almost 50% to the manufacturing GDP and continues to be the largest employer in the organized sector. The government recognizes that, and so we are keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that there will be some stimulus for auto industry. Maybe it's the scrappage policy, maybe it is a temporary reduction of GST rates, categorizing auto loans as priority sector loans. So a number of things that we are looking at, and hopefully we should get some mention in the stimulus packages which are yet to be announced by the finance minister.
Well, it's been an extraordinarily challenging journey for the last, I'd say, almost a year now for the automotive dealer sector, especially because you had the slowdown that you were faced with, then the entire BS4 to BS6 transition, and of course the pandemic came in with the lockdown. A lot of challenges were there, especially with the shutting down of the BS4 sales. The registrations became an issue. A lot of challenges that they were faced with, and then of course the month of April with zero sales, dealership shut across the nation, manufacturers not producing anything. For the first time in the history of India, we've had zero production and zero sales for that matter. So quite a lot of challenges that the sector has been facing.
So I think automotive industry and particularly the dealerships, I think have almost got used to disruptions. So it's disruptions not just last for 1 year, but I would say last 3 years. They started with BS3, BS4 transition, which was again a shock because it gave us only 4 days to switch over 100% to BS4 between 27th March 2017 to 31st March 2017. It was a big blow to the bottom lines of both manufacturers and dealerships. And since then, I think you're also noticing that a lot of new safety norms are coming into automobiles, which are good. I'm not saying they're not. We are for the safety of the customer and the safety of all the consumers that use our vehicles. But but it also does is that it increases the cost of acquisition of vehicles. And then there was that insurance regulatory authority order which said that 5 years of insurance comprehensive third-party insurance was mandatory for two-wheelers and three-wheeler, 3 years for cars, which again brought up the cost of acquisition. And of course, then the BS6 transition. And amongst all these disruptions, I think automobile dealerships have been trying tooth and nail to survive, to do their best. But yes, this one was a very, very big blow. Something which we had not anticipated, something which we had never even dreamt of. And this has really swept the ground under our feet. And we will need to do much, much more to survive. And very, very tough situation.
Right. The automotive dealership is essentially the face of the automotive industry in a large way, for that matter. It's the first and only point of contact that the consumer has with the manufacturer. Now, in the current scenario, if you had to ignore the lockdown, you've got there's still a lot of there was still a lot of inventory that existed in this whole shift from 4 to 6. If the lockdown scenario wasn't there, how much better off would the dealers have been? Would you be in a situation to liquidate that inventory and consume that entirely?
So yes, it was. I told you, disruptions. I think we are learning to live with those disruptions, and the lockdown was a huge disruption right in between the transition from BS4 to BS6. I think both manufacturers and dealers had planned their BS4 inventories in such a manner that we would be comfortable in terms of liquidating our inventories well before the 31st March, and not only liquidating them, getting them registered. All of a sudden, I think it started with the first week of March when the news started coming in that India also got impacted with the corona. And around the 20th of March, a number of states started declaring lockdowns partially. And I think the 100% lockdown happened before the last week of March. So we were not prepared for this, and no manufacturer was prepared for this. So we were again pushed into a situation where we had to get into distress sales of BS4 vehicles, and not only distress sales, also pushing ourselves to get those vehicles registered. And because of the lockdown, all the RTO shut, the government offices shut, and we could not have done anything else. So we went obviously to the Supreme Court to seek some relief. And I think that was a big step which FADA took all by itself without involving the manufacturers. I don't think FADA took such a bold, large step ever before. Fortunately, we did get partial relief, not the relief that we were looking for, but we did get partial relief to the extent that all vehicles which were sold but unregistered, BS4 vehicles, the Supreme Court extended the deadline from 31st March to 30th April. And I think that was a big, big relief we got. We were also wanting an extension for liquidating our BS4 stocks post 31st March. There, the Supreme Court did give us a relief, but a very, very minor relief of 10% of the BS4 unsold inventories to be liquidated within 1 week of the lifting of lockdown. So that was not what we were looking for. But anyway, I guess whatever we did get is good for us and will mitigate some of the problems as far as the dealerships are concerned. We're hoping that something else happens, and whatever is left, something else happens because of the kind of condition the country is in, the kind of condition all businesses are in. We have gone back to the Supreme Court, have made another prayer, keeping our fingers crossed. Let's see, but a long journey.
Do you see any signs of, do you see any hope coming in from the Supreme Court towards that effect?
Hope, definitely. But will it happen? A big, big question mark. You really cannot predict what the Supreme Court decides. And
right.
So keeping our fingers crossed. But we are hoping and praying that something does happen for us.
Right. Post this whole lockdown situation, moving on, do you see any change in consumer behavior once our current situation stabilizes, the new normal? Do you see consumer patterns, behavior changing?
So I think it's not just automobile consumers. We are getting into a new world. All of us are getting into a new world, a world which we had not thought of, a world which we had only seen in movies and probably science fiction. So we're getting into that world. So a huge change in consumer behavior as far as automobile is concerned. Some positives, some negatives. I'll start with positives. Positives are that with a huge concern on safety and health, and the fact that social distancing will become the new norm, I think people will minimize their travel by mass transport, buses, railways, and also minimize their use of shared mobility. So taxis, cabs, radio taxis. So consumers would want to have their own mode of transport to be safe and healthy, not just for themselves but also for their families. So that's one positive that we are looking at. The negatives are a lot because there is this work from home culture. TCS says that 75% of its employees will never come to office. So, and I'm sure a lot of others will do so. Specifically, after the last 2 months, we have all realized that working from home is a reality, is a possibility, and probably is easier than traveling to work. So I guess whichever profiles do not require your physical presence in your work premises, people will be working from home, if not fully, partially. Maybe once a week you come to office and rest you manage from your house. So all that would definitely reduce the requirement for mobility. What it will
Which is a
also
fairly
do
ironic
is,
situation, isn't it? Because on the one hand, there's a lot of conversation about people wanting to buy their own cars or two wheelers, or have their own mobility solution for that matter. On the other hand, there's this whole culture of work from home coming in as well, which is detrimental, effectively, to purchasing new vehicles or wanting or having the need to have a vehicle. Because most cars or most vehicles that we use at this point in time is largely for the commute, work to home, home to work.
no, but see, how I'm looking at it, Bert, is that while work from home will happen, but you will not be lockdowns in your home. And in fact, the urge to move out of your houses, specifically when you're working from home, is going to be much, much larger than what it is now. Because probably moving out for leisure, probably moving out for shopping, probably moving out will become more important than what it used to. Because everybody who was working, whether it was men, women, families, I guess they had opportunity to get out of work from home. There will be no such opportunity. So they will look forward to weekends, they'll look forward to moving out. And I guess therefore personal mobility, in spite of work from home, will become important. But people will probably look for cheaper solutions. So I see some light at the end of the tunnel, specifically for entry level cars, smaller cars, entry level two wheelers. So I think personal mobility will become extremely, extremely crucial and important. We are seeing some signs of these in China. While we cannot compare our economy with the Chinese economy, but we have seen that when it opened up in China again after the Wuhan disaster, automobile sales have picked up, though on the back of a big amount of subsidy which the Chinese government is giving. But I guess sales are coming back to the auto industry. We hope that something like that will happen in India also.
But having said that, Nikunj, that is, I would assume, a longer term plan for that matter, where personal mobility is concerned. Because in the short term, there was another corollary that I had was uh, people aren't going to be going out and buying cars because it isn't an essential purchase at this point in time. With the current situation, a lot of jobs lost, incomes depleted, and diminished. People aren't going to be really rushing out to buy cars at this point in time. It gets it's a whole new set of challenges for the automotive industry.
You're right, Bert. So we are not definitely looking at sales immediately coming back to us. I think this is a long-term perspective that I'm talking about, 18, 24 months. People have lost jobs, people have closed their businesses, have suffered massive losses, specifically small traders, MSMEs, small businessmen. They were already going into trouble. So it's not going to come back very easily, and it's not going to come back very fast. But I think, and that's the challenge for us, that we need to see how we hold ourselves for the period till the consumer comes back, till the sentiment improves. Cars and automobiles definitely come into the category of discretionary purchase and will not rank very high on the priority list of consumers immediately. So we will need to hold on, we will need to wait, and we will need to consolidate ourselves.
Do you also see a shift in the kind of purchases that are happening, or do you foresee a shift in purchases happening from more premium segments to the more affordable segments, principally because people may need a car? You might have to buy one, but then why spend that kind of money on buying a more expensive vehicle when you could probably get two for, or rather one each for members of your family? Maybe you and your wife you could use your own cars, but they now be smaller cars instead of larger premium cars. You see that kind of a shift happening as well.
I'm sure there will be a shift for not only that reason, but also the fact that everybody wants to conserve cash, and everybody has understood that the buzzword for getting through this pandemic is to conserve cash, to have liquidity available with you, and not to squander it around on assets. So there will be a shift to more affordable cars, entry level cars. And I was listening to Mr. R.C. Bhargav the other day, and in the 15 days that some dealerships have opened, they've already noticed a shift towards smaller cars. So, but we'll have to wait and see. It's too early in the day to say, but logically, there has to be a shift towards small, affordable cars and small, affordable two-wheelers.
Uh, it's going to be a tough time ahead. What can act as a catalyst to bring the auto industry back on track?
I guess to bring back the customer, to bring back the sentiment, we are looking at two things. One is government support, and two is positive economic indicators. We can see the positive economic indicators in the rural economy. We have had a good crop, we have good crop prices, and we are also looking at a normal or a better monsoon this year. I also see that the farmer has not really faced a lockdown. The government from day one had allowed farming activity to continue because it was peak of harvest season. So people have harvested their crops, are bringing it to the mandi. They are getting their money from the mandi, and they have continued to till their soil. The other thing which has happened is that some of the migrant labor has come back and is now helping their families in tilling their land. So the cost of farming in terms of employing labor probably could reduce the way forward, because these people are not going to return back so easily. They're scared, they're confused, and they'd prefer staying with their families. So I think the rural economy will come back faster, and that's a positive that I'm looking at and hoping for. The support that we are looking for the government to kickstart the auto industry, one is temporary reduction in GST in spite of the stretched revenues of the overall GDP of the economy. Two, we are the biggest employers, and if jobs are so important in this pandemic, then ignoring the auto industry would be a huge cost in terms of job losses. If jobs have to be retained and retained across geography of the country, then auto dealerships are a very big source of jobs. So I think the government will look at that and will give us some support. We are looking at a scrappage policy. I think again the Ministry of Transport, Mr. Nitin Gadkari did say that the scrappage policy should now come very soon. So I hope it happens, and it also happens with sufficient fiscal incentives to induce buying. The other thing that was announced in the first package to continue, in addition, depreciation not just for businesses, but also to individuals like you and me. Because if we need personal mobility, and if we are given depreciation benefit, then we will buy cars, we'll buy two-wheelers. and it will have an impact on our income tax returns. We will conserve some cash, and that is the cash that we will use to pay our margin monies. So that's another thing that we are looking at. And finally, we are looking at auto loans getting into priority sector, so that the banks are more aggressive, the NBFCs are more aggressive in financing them. So I think a multitude of factors and a positive sentiment should do the trick.
Do you see the industry recovering without government support? How critical is that aspect? We've been quite self-reliant in the past, and not really relying on government support to come bounce back.
So yes, I tend to agree with you, but I think some changes have happened. But I think it is the first time that the entire ecosystem, auto ecosystem, has come together. So if you look at the ecosystem, starting from component manufacturers to vehicle manufacturers to dealerships for doing sales and after sales, first time I've seen that all three have come together. All the appeals which have gone to the government, to the PMO, have been signed by the presidents of all three associations. I have not seen this happening before. And I guess when all three do come together, their voice will be a little louder, will be taken more seriously, and the government will definitely give us some year before they take decisions. So, I am being an optimistic. I am keeping my fingers crossed, and I'm hoping the government will recognize the fact that auto industry anywhere in the world is the spinal cord for the economy. It's the backbone for the economy. And realizing that, they will not totally ignore the auto industry, and government will come in. I think government is being positive. All indications are that the government is taking some very bold steps, bolder than we ever thought. A 20 lakh crore package, 10% of GDP. I had not thought of it. We were talking of 1 or 2% increase in the package, and it's a 10%, including, of course, what has already been announced. But that's a bold, very, very positive step. So I'm sure auto industry will get some part of it.
Sure. With the automotive dealerships currently, coming out of the slowdown, coming out of the lockdown, what are the kind of measures that dealerships are taking at their end to cope with the current situation, planning towards future sales, getting consumers back into their showrooms? What's happening on that front, Nikunj?
So I think a lot will need to be done. First of all, I think, and this will happen only with the support of the vehicle manufacturers, is to trim down our costs. And trim down our costs drastically. One major contributor to costs is the inventories that we have held. Having a 4, 6, 8 weeks inventory was almost normal for the auto industry. I think the industry has realized that how foolish it is money for banks and financial institutions, while we lose money, both the manufacturers and the dealers, because inventory lies with both of them. So both have agreed, I think, in principle, that inventories have to be trimmed down, and trimmed down drastically. While dealers would want a just-in-time inventory, where we have a pull inventory and not a push inventory, we get vehicles only when the customer wants. I think there'll be we'll strike a balance, and we'll definitely trim down our inventories drastically as compared to the past. Low inventories will become the norm and that will result in reduction of costs. The second thing that we will need to do is focus on productivity and efficiency of our manpower. Our manpower costs are extremely high, and I guess we are overstaffed in terms of the number of profiles that we have. So I think we'll get into multi-skilling of our manpower, so that one person can do the job of more than one profile. It will be because we'll be getting only 1/3 or 1/2 of the staff coming into the dealerships because of social distancing. So unless we adopt multi-skilling and upskilling our people, there is no way we'll be able to do with the reduced staff. So I guess productivity, efficiency will become buzzwords. And finally, I think digital. Digital is a double-edged sword. While digital will be a support to dealerships in terms of getting far more inquiries digitally than we ever had before, it could also mean that so many dealerships are not required. Manufacturers will definitely look at reaching out to customers directly. Most manufacturers have already launched digital platforms for making online purchases easy for the customer. I'm sure you would have seen the Mahindra ad, which talks about buying a vehicle being simpler than buying a pizza. 4 clicks and you buy a vehicle. So it's easier said than done, but people are looking at that. So I don't think anybody would have ever thought of even coining a phrase like that 2 months back. But today they have coined it and they have launched the platform. Maruti has done it, Hyundai has done it, Hero has done it, almost everybody has done it. So I guess we will need to become conscious of that fact. And I think we will, as dealers, need to be as actively be available in the digital world as the manufacturers are. We will probably need to have our own apps. We will probably need to have our own websites. And we will probably now not just depend on manufacturers, but be very, very digitally active, digitally conscious, and reach out to our customers, respond to their inquiries, respond to their requests much faster than we ever did before. So I think the entire way automobile business was being done will undergo a drastic change, and there will be a move towards digital and virtual much faster than we had ever anticipated before.
But these three aspects that you discussed, I'd just like to go over them once more, especially the just-in-time, the philosophy that's going to come into a lot of showrooms because you need to manage your inventory. Would this effectively mean a few concerns for consumers at the end of the day in terms of delivery times? Because would that extend or would that get delayed? Will it prolong, deliveries for customers? Would this also mean a shift in manufacturing cycles for manufacturers at the end of the day?
So, but let me ask you a question now. So, I think there's been a huge shift to online buying of your grocery, online buying of your daily needs. And people now habitually wait for that 1 week sale announcement, for that one big sale day by Amazon or a big bazaar. And people have started planning their grocery shopping for an entire month or an entire week. So if they can start thinking that way for their groceries, vehicle purchase is not a small purchase. I'm sure they would want to buy the one that they want and would want to wait to get the right model, the right configuration, and the right color. So I guess buying habits will change and people will become more conscious about it. If because of that they get cheaper vehicles, if because of that our costs go down and we are able to be competitive, I'm sure the consumers will change their behavior and will not mind waiting for a week or even 2 weeks to get the right car, the right color, the right configuration, the right model, the right variant. So I think buying habits will change as far as consumers will concern. And it was important that you don't lose retail because of non-availability of stock. But I think that's now the thing of the past. People will want to wait and people will change their buying habits. And I'm reasonably certain about this.
Coming to the second point, where you said dealerships will have to start working with probably leaner staff, multi-skilling individuals within those showrooms itself, those workshops for that matter, people who can do different jobs as well within that entire organization. Is that going to present a challenge by itself for most dealerships, especially as service qualities are concerned, customer service for that matter?
So I don't think anything will happen at the cost of quality of service, whether at the point of sales or at the point of service. In fact, it will only improve. But see, what really happens is that you get into a comfort zone. When there was comfort, when we could afford so many profiles, I think we were doing it. But I think auto industry has been the fastest to respond to changes, and we have seen it in the past. I think we will come up to it again. We will not compromise on service quality. We will not compromise on the customer experience at the point of purchase, but we will definitely see that our staff is more productive, more efficient, and far more customer centric than ever before. So I don't think that will happen. It will not be at the cost of customer centricity.
All right. And the last part that you talked about, digital, the move, that transition to digital spaces, to the e-commerce platforms. Do you generally believe that there is, in the long term, I mean, would this really benefit consumers, manufacturers, as well as dealerships? Or do you still see the traditional method of, buying and selling that's happening, where consumers still prefer coming down to a showroom, physically, experience the vehicle, have that discussion with the sales executive at the showroom, because that's a way of that's a way of negotiating and getting down. We love a discount, we love a bargain as Indians, but with an online space, that isn't exactly possible.
So, see, physical is important. So, buying a vehicle, touch, feel, experience, all that is important. A test ride, probably with the family, is important. I don't think those things will drastically change. But I think most of the buying experience will now become digital and virtual. So, the delivery of the vehicle, if you don't go to the showroom, probably the dealer comes to your house. He delivers the vehicle at your house. He brings the vehicle to your house for you to touch and feel it. So the showroom visit will reduce, but probably the dealer will reach out to you. There'll be pick up and drop services even for your service. You don't go to the showroom, the dealer comes to you. But all this will happen at some cost. And I'm sure we will need to factor in these costs when we look at the experience of the customer. Will need to get at his house and not coming to the showroom. But yes, the number of showroom visits, the number of showroom footfalls will drastically reduce. Most of the inquiries, most of the negotiations will happen online. The customer doesn't need to be physically present to do a negotiation. And I guess when he starts doing it digitally, probably he'll have a much, much bigger basket of information, and probably will be much better placed to negotiate with the dealer than ever before. Because geographical boundaries would have gone. He can explore anywhere. He can look at any place. So I guess we will need to get used to the customer being far more digital, and for us to make virtual experiences far more important than physical experiences in our show.
I do hope these changes, these transitions come in effect, of course, and positively also for that matter. Though I do see several concerns also at the same time, but I think things will slow down. But there will definitely be enhancements in terms of customer service. I do believe that is going to be the future. While processes will get a little slower, a little more spaced out for that matter. But I think there will be better service that will come customers' way. Nikunj, thank you. We don't have a lot of time ahead. We are coming to the end of this session. I think before it times out by itself, I'd like to thank you for being with us on this. There's some very sharp insights that we've gleaned from you, some things that's new that we've learned as well. Thank you for being on this conversation with us.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you so much.